Thank you. Yeah, so my name's Steve Hooley. My company's Data Steve Limited, and I'm a BI contractor. And I do various contracts in the BI space, data modeling and data analysis as well. That picture is, I hate that picture, but I did provide it, so it's my own fault. So, yeah, Oskar was kind enough to suggest I could do a little talk at the start of this, kind of a warm-up talk. It's not going to be hilarious because it's not like a comedy kind of warm-up where everyone starts shouting and cheering. It's just a short little thing. It's actually taken from a lightning talk I did for the Brighton Data Forum just over 2 years ago now. And it's called Naughty Cat, Don't Do It. So I'll explain the name, but this picture I got off the internet. Then there's loads of pictures of cats on the internet. And it's jumping onto a pizza, as you can see. There's probably fur going to the pizza. It probably licked some of the pizza slices. So it's definitely a naughty cat, and it definitely shouldn't be doing that. But the reason I've called my talk this is because I think it's an effective way of remembering this abbreviation, which is Naughty Cat DD. And this abbreviation in turn sort of explains a framework I use for improving the key performance indicator KPI creation process. And it saves, you do all the work in advance and it saves time later. That's the principle of it. And what I'm going to do for the rest of the talk is basically introduce the sort of typical KPI process. I'll go through each stage of this one by one to show how this can help, and then revisit that process to show how it would have improved everything. So the KPI process, this is a drawing I did, admittedly quite cynical drawing I did of a company structure. So we've got the boss at the top. Now this could be the boss of the whole company, or maybe the head of the department or something like that. And at the bottom, in the trenches, we've got the data analysts, and they're collating data, transforming it, modeling it, and then serving up numbers to the boss so they can make informed decisions. So the idea is the boss will ask for some KPIs and probably say something like, I just need the headline numbers and I'm not interested in the detail. And then the data analyst will go away and they'll come back, maybe make a dashboard or some kind of report. And following the instructions, we'll present the headline numbers, maybe just some numbers, maybe some red and green if it's good or bad. And then the boss will probably say, okay, thanks. So what is that really telling me? And at this point, the data analysts have to go back, go into more detail, extend the reports, re-engineer some of the dashboards, etc. And so I'm going to start going through the stages of the Naughty Cat process, which will hopefully help avoid this part here. So first we have N for number. So obviously this is the core of any KPI, just the measurement, the metric for the current period. For this example, I'm going to pretend that the company sells apples. And so they've sold 550 apples in the current period. And that's useful to know, but obviously more could be said. And one of the obvious questions someone could ask is, how good is that? Are we improving? Are we getting worse? Is it a record number of apples sold? So the next two letters, OT, is for over time. So now we've still got the headline number here, but I've also introduced a nice clean bar chart with the current period on the right, but multiple periods going back in history, going back here. And we can see a few more things now. So there's a few peaks here. There's a nice big peak. And we can see that recently we've been improving, but we're by no means at our best spot. So someone will look at that and they'll say, that's fine. But again, they'll say something like, well, we know that was a good spot there because apples everywhere sold well. So it wasn't just our company doing well. So this brings in the IC part, which is in context. So now we've got the number of apples the company sold in the dark grey here. We've also got the number of apples for the current period sold in general. The timeline chart now has those grey bars showing those two numbers over time. And the highlighted metric is effectively like a market share kind of metric. And it gives much more an idea of how the company's doing relative to the market. So now we've got a bulge here rather than here. And the headline number's been changed to the market share as well. But then someone will see this and say, that's also all very well, but we have a department that come up with targets. They spend a long time bringing things together, looking at different elements, more to do with what the company's aims are, and all kinds of subtle things. And so this is the AT part, which is against target. So now we've got the orange is the target. I've simplified it a bit, obviously, because it just says 50% the whole way down, but that could be more complex. If we go above target, it's green. If we go below target, it's red. And the total number at the top is green, and there's a nice clear up arrow to show that things are getting better. And then the last thing, if you remember, is naughty cat, don't do it, is the DD part, which is with drill down. And this is where it's a bit of a nice to have, because often, you'll have a dashboard with numbers and then people might drill through to another page, or they might hover over and see detail. But I think it's quite nice to have a chosen important category right there next to the KPI. So I've just done generic categories here, but again, with the apples example, if it was type of apple or where they sold the apples or something like that, that could be split here. And you can see what's contributing to the variance above target. So, and that is basically applying the naughty cat DD process to the whole thing. So if we revisit the KPI process, again, the boss would say, I just need the headline numbers, I'm not interested in the detail. The data analyst will go away and they'll present the headline numbers, but with the naughty cat DD framework. The boss will say, okay, thanks, that's everything I need. And then the data analysts are left to get on with their mountains of other work. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehmet. I can't talk without liquid in my hand, and I've just finished my drink, so it's very handy that they placed the fridge next to the stage here. Let's just try not to mess up the tech. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, as Mehmet said, I'm the budget option. Unfortunately, we tried to get somebody a bit more expensive available this evening, and they weren't available, so you're lumbered with me. I'm going to talk to you about Shiny. Shiny is something that I love a lot, and we're going to come into why I love Shiny a lot. I will tell you a little bit about me as well. I'm not going to pitch myself or my company to you, don't worry. This is kind of me. This is my journey. I love maths. I love stats. I love data. I love data science. I love cricket, and because I love cricket and there's loads of stats, I love gambling as well. You can tell how good at gambling I am because I'm here in Brighton, near Brighton Beach, not on a beach in the Bahamas. So I love gambling. I'm not very good at it, but it's great fun. This is my career journey. Headhunted on a cricket pitch because I love cricket. Did a 6-week summer job in the city, lasted a little bit longer than 6 weeks, worked for some marketing agencies, and then started a company in 2020 in the middle of a global pandemic because, why not? Best time to do it and all that kind of stuff. Mehmet's told you a little bit about Data Cove already. So we're a Brighton-based data and analytics consultancy. We specialize in customer analytics, so that's helping to unearth your most valuable customers. Marketing analytics, so that's to measure the effectiveness of your marketing investments. And process automation, which is taking the most painful process in your business, writing a bit of code in R or some other snake-based language, and getting rid of it forever. Anyway, I said I'm not here to pitch to you. Shiny, right? Shiny. I told Oskar at the beginning this should be like competitive. You should all vote at the end for your best BI tool, but apparently that's not going to happen. So Shiny. Why Shiny? Because I love R, obviously. But I am going to talk to you a little bit more about Shiny, what it is, why it's good, why you should use it and use nothing else, not just because it's the budget option. So what is Shiny? If you look on the Shiny Apps website, this is literally how Posit, the company that own R and R Studio, this is how they describe Shiny. So they talk about the open source framework. I'm highlighting 3 terms in black here. It's open source framework within R, might be within other languages as well. No spoiler alerts coming. And it's elegant and powerful. We're going to talk about the elegance and the powerful Shiny apps that you can build this evening. And we're going to talk about how you can use it to build not just web applications, but just applications generally to really help you use and understand data. So let's just delve into those three terms in a little bit more detail. So let's talk about open source. The open source world is great because the invention of open source means that basically anybody can pick it up and do it. You know, you could go away right now when you go home this evening after you've come to the pub and told me how much you love Shiny. You can go home and develop your own Shiny apps. It's great. But you can also do it in a relatively inexpensive way as well. Remember, this is the budget option. I'm going to keep using that line now. I reckon I can sell more to clients. So it's all, do you want the budget option? Yes, we always want, everyone wants budget option. So open source, brilliant. It's relatively inexpensive, but also there are no barriers to entry. Wonderful. Elegance and powerful. I think the elegance when it comes to Shiny is because you can customize your app in any way that you want. And it's always when I'm talking to people about Shiny and we're building Shiny apps for them, I say, look, just don't worry about the colors and the fonts. We'll deal with that at the end. Let's get the content right, because we can make these things look as my son would say, I want a sick looking app. You know, that's what he says. He's only 8 years old. He's getting all the lingo, isn't he? Let's not talk about how old I am. Anyway, but so elegance and powerful is a really important concept when it comes to Shiny. You can customize fonts, colors, logos, boxes, anything that you want. You can even put artwork into a Shiny app, as well as all the charts and the numbers that you're putting in. And then the web application bit, you can deploy your Shiny app to a Shiny server, which effectively gives it a website, or you can embed it within your own website. And it is really, really budget, again, to host. We'll go with that budget term. You can actually host your Shiny apps for free if not many people are using them, or if you're not using it that much on a monthly basis. But a Shiny app will never cost you more than $349 a month to host on a Shiny server. And quite honestly, I've never seen anybody use that top package. The top package I've ever seen used is the one below that, which is $119. That is all in per month. It's not per user. You don't have to pay, and your client has to pay separately. So it is a relatively cost-efficient option. There we go. It does work. This is what a Shiny app looks like. This is an example of a Shiny app. Before anyone starts getting, oh my God, you're showing us some real life data. This is all publicly available data. This is a Shiny app that we're building at the moment. I'm quite happy to show it to you because you could go and find this data online. I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, unless you're really interested in like butterfly species and birds and bats and that kind of stuff. It's fun, but yeah. Anyway, Shiny, let's just talk about some of the benefits of Shiny. I think we've spoken about the open source nature of it already, but you can make fully bespoke dashboards. So this means if you want to put a chart in a certain place, you want to put a color in a certain place, a logo in a certain place, with some tools and some of the BI tools you might be hearing about this evening, you're kind of constrained by the layout of a page that BI tool will give you. Within Shiny, you can put literally absolutely anything anywhere you want to put it. The complexity that you can get from using R, so if you built a model in R and you want to then visualize that model, everything stays within R. You built your predictive model in R, you built some charts in R, you can use the power of everything that you built in R to display them on a visual front end in Shiny. So you're not exporting things to CSVs, sending them back to a server, then picking that up onto a server, putting it into Power BI, Tableau, Looker, wherever else you want to put it. And I just think the affordability, again, you know, Shiny is really affordable. And if you can invest the time up front, because you need the R skills, or perhaps even some other skills as well. There you go. I didn't even mention it before because I don't like to talk about Python. But yeah, you need the R skills or the Python skills. So the upfront development time might be a little bit more, but the ongoing hosting will be much more cost effective for you as a brand. There are a few things you need to consider, right? It's as much as I think Shiny is the best thing since sliced bread, obviously, there are a few things you need to consider. There is the prerequisite of R and Python. You need R or Python now. Python for Shiny is now a thing. It's a recent thing. We haven't used it yet, but we're about to. So in a few months' time, I'll come back and tell you about our experience with the Shiny for Python. And maybe we'll do an R versus Python Shiny or something like that. That would be a Brighton R Py talk. you do need a bit of R and Python, but it's not just R and Python. You need to be able to use some of the more advanced features within R. And there's this concept of reactivity and observers that I'll show you on the next slide. But also, if you want to make the apps just look that bit more special, you need to have some basic HTML or CSS or JavaScript knowledge. So I'm kind of learning a little bit of that as I go, just to make the apps just look a little bit better, better fonts, better colors, better headlines, better structure and boxing. I'm just going to talk a bit about reactivity. So with a Shiny app, you develop two sets of R code. You have a UI for the front end and you have a server for the back end. So here's what the front end might look like. And you've got 5 buttons across the top. So what happens when you click this button here? Something needs to happen. So you need to tell the server at the back end what's going to happen. Now for that, how many of you code in R in the audience or have used R in the past? That's good. Good. There's a few of you. I'm not going to ask about other languages because I don't want to make it get worse. But anyway, if you've coded in R before, you'll probably recognize some of the concepts here, but there's a few things that are a little bit different from what you might normally see. You've got this concept of input and output. So input is your front end. So anything on the front end is classed as an input. Anything on the server side is classed as an output. And when you have an output, you need to tell the input to render something. So in this case, we're rendering a chart, which is in the high charts package. So we say render a high chart. You could render text. You could render a ggplot. You could render anything else within R. But there's also this concept of reactivity. When you click on a button, it has got to be reactive, which means that the button's happened. Something needs to be called from the server. And because this is a local government tool, we want to get a latitude and there's a longitude underneath that. I didn't display all of the code, but that will change every time somebody clicks on a button. So we need to tell it that this is a reactive value. This is not a static value. Just to show you a little bit more. So this is another one I prepared earlier. Here's a video of the Shiny app, which is hopefully playing and things will happen. This is the same Shiny app. There we go. So here's a Shiny app in action. Again, similar tool, it's all publicly available data. Let's select Brighton as our local authority. So we're in Brighton this evening. So you can see we've selected a local authority in here, and we've got a couple of lines within the high chart package. So you've got one line for your local authority. You've got one line here that shows you the UK national average. And you can see, just that like any other BI tool, you can filter in or filter out the time frame that you're looking at. You can even change the local authority again. You can filter in and filter out particular data series. So if you don't want to look at the national average, just want to look at your own scores, you can look at that there. You can also, as you can see here, you can then look at other scores. So we've got a nice color code. By the way, this is not my choice of color palette. I'm bound by what other people choose, but you can see as I'm selecting multiple tabs here, you can have all the colors of the boxes change. So this is really the customization that you can get within a Shiny app. You can fully customize what you're doing. I can go back and change my authorities again. When I go onto this final tab here, I've got a few more data series that we can look at as well. So you can see we've split out into male and female for this particular index. And then if you come across here, you can select just the males or just the females. Also, we've got I'm obviously talking too quickly. We've got a sort function at the top of the table. So if you wanted to sort your table by age group or by gender or by scores, you can do that. Again, fully customizable features. You can paginate things, so I could put them onto 3 pages if I wanted, but I can also make that table searchable as well. So this is really using all of the functionality within R. You can build a model, you can build charts that are drill down into whatever format you want, and then you can search the data tables. Again, search them, sort them, drill down. Hopefully, I'm within time. I haven't heard an alarm, so that's a good thing, right? I'm always happy to take questions. There you go. Just before I end, I'm also responsible, really sorry, for all of these flyers that are on your chairs this evening. So this is a conference that we're running in Brighton in 5 weeks' time today. It is an R and Python conference. It is one of the biggest R and Python events in the UK that we're bringing from London to Brighton. We've got some wonderful keynotes, including Mr. R himself, Hadley Wickham, renowned authors Steph Locke and Andy Field, who apparently gives his lectures dressed as a wizard. So hoping we're going to get something like that in 5 weeks. And we've got Crystal from the BBC, along with all sorts of other R and Py things going on. Have a look. There's a QR code on here to the website to find out more details. We're also giving a discount code tonight. So if you put in the code Earl Meetup, It's quite an easy one to remember. You're at a meetup and it's Earl meetup at the checkout. You can get 10% off all tickets. And now I will open up if there's time for one question. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Jeremy. But you forgot to tell us about Shiny Gallery.
Yo.
What can you tell us about Shiny Gallery? I love that. That's my favorite feature.
It's not a feature I use very often, to be honest.
It's great. It's like a gallery of all sorts of gorgeous dashboards and web apps. You choose one you like the most, and it gives you not only a copy of it, but all the code behind it. So it's a great starting point. You find the most attractive dashboard you'd like to mimic, and you get all the code from it.
Probably with the amount of customization that's involved with a lot of the apps I build, I always have to start from scratch. So I've not used Shiny Gallery that much. It sounds exciting. Sounds like something that I'd like to use more, but I'm probably not going to be allowed to use more by the powers that be that say, I want an app that looks like this, but I will check it out. Any more for any more?
Any question from live audience? Hold it down so it goes through.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeremy. I just want to ask, like, what's been the easiest way to host your Shiny apps with clients, and what's the best way to sell it so you don't have to pay for it?
Yeah, I wish I had some good answers to that one, because what tends to happen is we have to set up a Shiny server, we have to pay for it, and then we have to just make sure we get the money back from the clients is normally what happens. I think what I try and do is I would always try up front, if you're building a Shiny app, to give them the cost for the annual hosting up front. So if you say, look, it's $119 a month, don't tell them that bit. Work out what it is annually, because it's only just over $1,000. If you built a Shiny app, you can just add that into the contract and say, hey, look, we'll host it for a year. It's included. You don't even need to talk about the cost. You can just add a couple of days in here. I'm not trying to tell you to fudge day rates or anything like that. But quite often we end up having to host it for them because they just don't want to end up hosting code. They don't want to end up touching anything they might break. So I would give them an annual cost up front rather than talking about it as a monthly hosting fee.
Any question from the live audience? No. I guess, yeah, that's the first part of our presentations, right? So let's give a warm hand to Jeremy once more, please. I know, or I can take this on. Thank you. I know, yeah, there are lots of small and medium enterprises that are running in the Brighton. So if you need some help, especially from live audience, you know whom to contact on the preparing some budget-friendly dashboards. So before the break, I just wanted to have a just short open discussions with you. So first of all, I want to ask briefly, what did you learn from these first 3 presentations of these are all different tech stacks. So I will be very glad if you share your thoughts or, yeah, experience. What did you learn from and how it reflects on your own personal and professional journey? Yeah. Let's do that. Yeah. They have a issue.
We're on. I actually thought Steve's methodology was really important, and it's obviously something that we try and work through with clients. You kind of get to the end of it, and quite often it's like, oh yeah, but I don't want that drill down, change the drill. But I think the actual framework of it is something that if you're embarking on any kind of dashboard build, it's really good practice to follow. as well as just wireframing the dashboard, obviously making sure they know what they're getting at the end of it. So just to say to anybody that's embarking on a dashboard project, that's a really easy way of remembering it. I've never thought of it as a naughty cat. So yeah, I obviously don't want to nick your work, but I quite like that. Shh.
It's open source.
Yes. So glad you're back, Phil.
So, anybody wants to add any thoughts? Okay, let me ask another intriguing question then. Which BI feature is the most important sounding in terms of your own use from all these tech stacks, from Looker, Shiny? Which one you make you most excited?
I think that something that nobody mentioned is, or that wasn't mentioned that much, is support of a wide variety of origins. When I'm looking at a BI tool, I always need to make sure that supports my origin, and that supports my origin without kind of too extreme loss of features. Does it make sense? Does it resonate with you guys?
Any reflection on that point?
So I think from our experience, it tends to be a decision when you're choosing your BI tool as to how many, where it connects to. From the top of my head, I'm sure it's quite a lot of things, but we tended to go for the architecture that is like, you have an EALT process which is then responsible for getting data from all the different locations and merging it into one place in a data warehouse. So as long as from our point of view, as long as Looker supports the data warehouse of choice, then it's suitable for our purposes. Although, if you have a particularly interesting data warehouse of choice, then that might be a consideration, I'm sure.
Looker wasn't supporting database till a couple of months ago.
How do you mean, sorry?
It wasn't supporting database.
Oh, Databricks, yeah. He said Looker wasn't supporting Databricks until recently, but it is now. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Thank you.
I have a question on Looker and LookML for those of you who use it. So, do you ever drop down into SQL, or do you solve everything in LookML, or is there ever? Do you have to separate that out, like with DBT, as suggested? Do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we would tend to have a workflow which sounds a bit like when you have a business user. Maybe there's a feature in the front end where you can create a custom field, and people can put in their own definition of what a field or what a column is. If they tend to be using that a lot, then they talk to us and say, "Okay, can you put this in the code now so everybody can use it? So I don't have to keep repeating myself." At that point, you have the option to do SQL at the column level, which is where you would define SQL in your LookML. Remember I showed everyone the table definition. That's normally where that would go, unless you had a deep-seated need for performance, at which point we would materialize it in the database prior to entering Looker.
So, any comments so far? So I guess, yeah, that's the first part of our discussion session. I guess we are going to have a 10 minutes break to refresh your drinks and also take your time. And we're gonna meet, I guess, 7:40. That will be fine. Yeah, okay. See you in 7:40 then. Hello. It is time to back to our seats. Sorry for breaking up your cool conversations between each other, but I think we need to start back again. with our next presentation. So most of the people reminds when we call the Power BI business intelligence tools, most of the people recalls it's a Microsoft Power BI. So we're gonna have a short live demo of the how can you implement a Power BI dashboard in a real time. So some of you already knew this Felipe from his latest talk on the neural networks in the last January. But today he will show his skills in the Power BI and how to implement the real-time dashboard. Let's give the stage to Felipe and give a warm hands to him as well. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, can we use this? Thanks. Hello. Thank you for the invitation, Mehmet and Oskar. I will be doing a demonstration in Power BI. And in this demonstration, I will be covering the next stage. First, data loading and transformation of the data. The second stage, how to create a data model inside Power BI. And this will be the heart of the dashboard. And finally, I will create some graphs and I incorporate some design into the dashboard. So the data I will be using. Sorry. Hello. The data I will be using is this one. This is the typical sales company sales data, where I can see the order table, territory data. This is the principal table or my fact table, where I can see in each row. Each row is a transaction, so I can see here the unit price, reseller key, customer key, unit price discount, total product cost, sales amount. I have other table about reseller data, where I can see information about the resellers. My date table with fiscal year, fiscal quarter, month, full dates, month key. A product data with information about each product that the company is selling. Here I can see the product name, color, list price, model, subcategory, and category. And finally, my table with the customer. This is the customer that the company, the customer of the company, with information of the city, state, province, country, and the name of the customer. So I will start first with a blank project. This is Power BI, a blank project in Power BI. And first I will load my data. Here I will select this Excel workbook. And I will select my sales data. Now I have to select each table and click on load. This is loading. In this case, I'm using Excel as the source, but in Power BI, I have the option to use more than 300 sources, different sources, between AWS, Azure, Snowflake, SQL. You have a lot of different sources.
But Excel is the slowest.
Yeah, Excel is the worst. It will take like 5 seconds.
Now it's generating the relationships because the Power BI has the option to detect automatically the relationships between the tables. So now this is detecting the model.
Well, that's what Excel is. It always takes longer in a demo.
Yeah, I think it's 8 megabytes, a little.
Oh my God, no one's going to choose Power BI now.
Okay, now it's ready. And I can see the next stage is create my model. But in Power BI, I have the option to detect automatically the model. So I can see here my relationships between the tables and my fact table in the middle of the model, the sales table, and dimensional table around the facts table. So the next stage in Power BI is make some transformations. For that, I have this tool. It's called Power Query. And in Power Query, I can do transformation like cleaning data or filter values. For instance, I will clean here this useless data or null values. And a useful feature of Power Query is that each step that I apply to the table is being saved here in this left panel. So I can see each step. And this is very useful because I can delete a step and come back to the original table or copy these steps and apply to another table. So I will apply this transformation. Now this is ready to create some graph. So I will create my first graph here. I want to see a amount of sales. So I have to move the column to this white canvas. This is amount of sales over the time. I will do this graph. And I will change this to a bar graph. Now I want to see amount of sales, but in this case by country. So it's similar. I need to move the column to this white canvas and the country that is here. And I will do a map. So I can change here in this panel, can select all these visual objects. And now I have a map with my sales by country. Now I will create a card with the total amount of sales. As sales by category. By category, and I will show this in a donut graph. And Power BI have the option to make a resume of all this data. It's called narrative. This is a text generated by artificial intelligence. So I will use that. So here I have my resume of all the data. And finally, I will add a filter to filter off this data by date. So I need the object filter here. And I have to move the date to this object. So here I have my filter. Okay, now I need some design. So I apply a background to this dashboard. And I have the option in the background, canvas background. I can, here I will load this image. And I will change the theme of the visuals to change the colors and make something more more appropriately. Now the last stage is just adjust this graph inside the boxes. Yeah, this now looks more like a dashboard. And we can test, for instance, the interactivity between the visual objects. For instance, if I select 1 year here, all the other objects are changing and are being filtering. The same with the filter date. If I move this filter, all these objects are changing. And this is why the model behind this dashboard is okay. Because the model is like the heart of the dashboard. If the model is not well constructed, the dashboard doesn't work. That's all. This looks more like a dashboard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Felipe. I can't believe we built the dashboard less than 10 minutes from scratch. So I think, yeah, we need to deserve one more round of applause. So if you're interested, the first lightning talk of Steve about the key KPIs, I think the next talk will be more interesting for you. So we are going to explore how to use KPIs in the Power BI environment. So I am inviting our next speaker, Phil Curtis, on the stage. So let's give him a warm hands as well.
There's no way I'm going to use a trackball on this one. Can you use that? I can, yeah. Well, I can just use I'll just use the space bar. Cool.
Do you need a mic or?
No, I try. Well, I did work last time. Yeah, I fixed it now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me? Yep, bit better. Cool. Right. No, I'm sorry, mate, I'm one slide in front, I think, and there's one before this. I need to go back. I haven't got the whole portal. There you go. Oh, nice one. Okay, I'm Phil Curtis. I'm the data architect, analytics engineer, general dog's body with a small company, tickboxanalytics.com. or analytics, SQL, database work, and Power BI. I'm not much of a Power BI salesman. People tend to think that I love Power BI. I'm not that much of a Microsoft fanboy, even though I'm a Microsoft partner. You can tell because actually I forgot to put Power BI in the title there. So it should actually say Power BI. Who should choose it? Well, anybody, because this is a Windows machine, so we had a few little setup issues, and most you data guys use Macs. But you don't need to use Windows. You can use the portal in Power BI, and so you can use that on a Mac, and so that anybody can use it technically. Editing is best done on Windows though. So there's a Power BI desktop, which is a free tool, and that leads to another reason why it's good to use Power BI, because it's completely free. You can use the Power BI desktop to do all your editing and analyze all your data, and there's no charge for it. You just download it from the Microsoft website, install it, but on Windows. After that, you can then buy into the portal for just £8 a month, and that will basically give you access to a portal where you publish your Power BI desktop, which Felipe just demonstrated, loading up data, etc., and creating the dashboard quickly. You just publish that into the portal, and that's where all the other users use it. For those, that's where Microsoft tried to start raking in your money, but it's £8 per month per user, which is reasonable, because some of these BI tools, you've got like platform charges of 25k a year. Not the budget option, obviously, that Jeremy put forward, but some of them. With Power BI, we can use powerful visualizations. I'm afraid I did knock up the slides very quick, so I didn't do a step through, so you just have to read down. I do want to get to the dashboard quite quickly, because this is just a step in. But we can do powerful visualizations. It includes Power Query, which Felipe just demonstrated. So that's an extract, transform, load tool. It's brilliant. It is very good. It's very click your way through, but as he showed, you can see the steps on the right hand side, and you can edit those afterwards. So it's not just pure Microsoft click and then forget about what you did, and then you can't control it. Power Query is powerful, and you can extend it. It's part of Azure in terms of you can now load it into Data Factory, so full enterprise systems can now bring in Power Query, and you can use that to edit and do your ETL or ELT. So that brings us to good cloud integration. We can use Azure, Microsoft Cloud. Microsoft are bringing in Fabric now as a semantic model, and to try to bring all the tooling together. To be honest with you, it's a little bit ropey at the moment, off record. There are bugs, issues, and things that they're developing all the time. You may stumble on something. I couldn't get nulls in for at one point, and things are going on, and it's developing as we're talking, but it's all going there. It's getting somewhere, but you're not stuck to Microsoft. The back end for Power BI can be anything, Snowflake or any of your databases. Personally, I'm a SQL guy, so SQL Server. We usually, use databases, online transactional databases, as opposed to online analytical databases like Snowflake, because we want to get transactions into the database in order for us to run our analysis on them. Once they're in there, then you can use an OLAP database, which again, Power BI can still connect to. And then on top of all that, there is a big community. Microsoft don't divide and conquer. I know that all of the tools have excellent communities, but Microsoft also has one and can provide support. What does it do well? Well, interactivity, I would say, is a very good aspect of Power BI. We saw some of the tools, and generally when we do stuff with analysis of data, things are very kind of screen-based and looking at one visualization at a time, maybe with lots of lines and so on for comparative reasons, but it's the interaction between visualizations that I think Power BI excels in. One of the reasons that it can do that is because it uses this DAX formula language, And that's what it uses to do running totals, moving averages, percentage ratios, etc. DAX is kind of like Excel on steroids, and we'll come back to that a little bit in a while. We just mentioned that Power Query does all your ETL, so you get that for free with Power BI. So there's another reason, that's another good aspect of it. You can put alerts in, like somebody mentioned earlier. You can, tell it to, send you an email when a KPI is exceeded or whatever. You can integrate all your charts with Power Apps, which are basically like low-code applications that you can knock up, publish to the browser. Everyone can use them, but you can also embed all your Power BI charts so that you can use drop-downs to filter and do whatever you need with data entry as well as reporting. Paginated reports are basically the old bog standard kind of crystal reports, corporate reports, boring things that the corporates like to use because, they can print out 8,000 pages of rubbish, but it's all nicely structured in a PDF. And so, boff, job done, you can move on to your next task. Power BI can also incorporate those now, which you never used to. It used to be a separate thing, and that is useful. The other good thing about Power BI is obviously export to Excel, because the old joke with every BI tool is, yeah, but does it export to Excel? So obviously, being a Microsoft product, it does. Scaling, the guy from 15 GIFs was saying that a lot of tools don't handle more than 1 billion rows. I would say 1 billion rows is easily done by Power BI. There's two methods to use it. One in memory, so it's all on your machine, and another direct query, where all the data resides on the back end. But the whole of Power BI is based on a thing called the Vertipack engine, which basically is column-based rather than row-based. And so it compresses everything, squeezes it all into very compressed data objects, and that's what it processes. And that means that it's a lot more scalable with larger data. Another presentation we could do on that. Another thing it does quite well is version control. However, just to highlight, and I know that we want to talk about things that it might not do well, so I just knocked up this little quick highlight, and I'll work from the bottom up. Version control is not great in Power BI. In fact, only recently have you been able to save it as a project file and then get the kind of thing like in Looker ML, where everything is properly Git controlled, so that you can check it in and fully version control it. You can do that with Power BI and all your DAX and all your objects, but it's still a little bit clunky, and you may need some third-party tools to make the most of it. But it's getting there. But I would say it's not its strongest aspect. Paginated reports, although it's a great idea, they're not completely integrated into the whole Power BI and Fabric environment at the moment. There's still some bugs and issues, but they're getting there. Formulas and the DAX. DAX is the driver behind Power BI, but it's also the thing that most people fall over on because you've got to learn a new language. Personally, I'd rather stick with SQL and Tableau, Looker. They use SQL and it makes sense to use that, but that's where the scaling becomes an issue because DAX is the language for Vertipack, and that's the column-based method to make it scalable. It's very powerful, but you can cut your hands on it when you're doing things with it. So it can be the bad side as well as the good. And then finally, the interactivity is ironically a slightly dodgy side of Power BI because there's so much interactivity, especially with the DAX, that sometimes you feel like you're playing whack-a-mole. Because you put one chart, you filter that on another, you do another one in there, you bring it all together, you go, great. And then the end user or the person paying the invoice says, oh, yeah, but that doesn't add up to that or whatever. And you go, oh, dear, you've got to go back to the drawing board, make sure it's all done. But you minimize that by doing what Felipe's demonstrated using a star schema. And we do that with Looker ML or any any BI tool, you want nowadays, you know, there's lots of discussion about it, but the star schema does tend to be the one that works most. And as long as you do that, then you can minimize the amount of SQL fiddling or DAX fiddling that you need to do. So I want to focus just on KPI monitor, KPIs themselves. I know it's a slightly boring subject, but the business users, we all need to answer questions like, I'm going to use a hospital dashboard, and I'll just show you that. You want to answer questions like, are we under or overstaffed? Which regions and locations? Where are we running low on available beds? When should we hire new staff? What's our hiring window? How long do we need the staff for? Which region do we need to provide hospital locations? And so on and so on. So I just need a little bit of help. Sorry, Charlie, I need to jump into the actual demo to get the. Right. Oh yeah, sweet, nice one. Sorry, just a little thick moment there. Just find it. So this is an example dashboard. All the hard work being done by Felipe to get all the data in there. This is a completely different one that I did in conjunction, Tickbox Analytics, with SQL Spreads. SQL Spreads is a plugin for Excel that basically enables you to connect to a SQL Server database, and whatever you type in the rows goes straight in the database. And so you've got an enterprise scale data entry system without having to write lots of apps. So just to show you the data that was entered, and we'll come back to this main screen in a minute. We drill through into this. This is our list of hospitals. This is all random data generated in SQL, just using a normal distribution. And we'll see some of the patterns on that later. But just so that you know the underlying data, this is the sort of thing, spreadsheet format. That's what we used SQL Spreads for, to enter that data and manage it and maintain it. Obviously, it was generated randomly to create bulk sets. But we can see that the lowest level of granularity is by week number. And for each week, we've got a number of beds, which is always going to be the same for each hospital. And that's what that drill down is at the moment. I mean, it might change, but generally it doesn't. Obviously, the number of beds used does change a lot, so on a weekly basis, and this may be daily or hourly even, you know, but this one is just weekly. And our KPI, we've got two KPIs. Those ones are heat mapped here, occupancy and staff to patients. Occupancy is basically out of the beds in use as a proportion of the total beds available. So just a very simple KPI. And in fact, these values are calculated in the back end using a calculated column in SQL, because as we were talking about before, we want to have numbers and KPIs. And this is the old naughty cat thing. They're very good there. And where we want to push everything upstream. We don't want it downstream with lots of people fiddling around, making their own little KPIs. We want to try to keep things as high as possible and present those. So we do that at the lowest level of granularity. And although this KPI is based on a hospital in a week, it could be masses of data. It could be the number of operations or the number of gloves used in them, or obviously whatever your business is. So, and that would be aggregated up. But at one level, that's where you decide where your KPI is. And this is it here. And this is the one that we'll look at. Occupancy. We won't worry too much about staff to patients, but basically that's how many staff there are to the current number of patients in the hospital. So back to our main dashboard, we've got all of those. We just looked at one hospital and all of the weeks. We've got all of the hospitals listed there. And we've, in this table item, we've got individual KPIs embedded in there to show us whether or not the KPI has been breached for that particular hospital. All of these are summarized as an average. So 68.6 is also shown in a higher summary there. And that basically is bang our KPI that we want people focusing on. Now, we've got a target there, 85%. So let's just look at a line chart. And it's a bit messy at the moment because we've got all the hospitals. But if we start filtering, we can get the numbers down. Let's start using this. Oh, it's a bit sticky, this. Oh, we haven't got a book or something I can put under a mouse mat. Yeah. I don't suppose anyone's got a quick mouse mat they could lend me. That's all right, I'll use this book. Thank you, man. Cheers. That's better. Look at that, first person to use a mouse on a demo here tonight. So we can filter by region, and this is the interactivity that we're talking about. Yeah, bam, bam, bam. Our visualizations we can use as filters. So those will filter all of the hospitals that we've got. We can see we've got less hospitals in the central area, more in the east, and more in the west. Slightly the other way around there. And in this curve, that is looking at 1 year at the moment. If we use a filter and we look at all of the data, we can see, well, we've got 4.5 years of data here with peaks and troughs. Let's try to make sense of that. Let's focus on 1 year. On 1 year, we've got our target KPI, the 85% that we've mentioned here. We've got that as a line on the chart there, so we can see where we want to be under, because we don't want to go over that amount, because basically 85% of all beds is reasonable, and that gives us 15% of free beds, just in case there are emergency situations. This is sorted by month and time period. So we can see in winter, we do breach the KPI, and in summer, we go below it. So that makes sense because obviously we've got more patients in winter. We can see this a bit clearer. You can actually select just a few of the hospitals that a manager or staff might be interested in, and we can see that a bit clearer on these line charts. So it's a bit messy when you've got everything, but obviously that's why you want the interactivity, so we can drill into exactly what we need to see. Now, this KPI, we rarely breach it because we're looking at an aggregation of the whole year. And obviously the whole year, it's not really that much useful information. What we're mainly interested in was what's the current period? Current period is generally by week, because that's what we're recording it as. So there we would start looking at, oh, okay, let's look at the end of the year. That's December. Oh, look, we've got some breaches here. So we know that actually we did hit the target, and we can actually see and sort the occupancy and start creating lists of which are all the hospitals that did breach that KPI. We can also use a control selection and use more than one filter, because otherwise it would just flip to that filter. And we can just say, well, let's filter it further down into only central or only west or only east. So we can see, most of these hospitals are violating, but good old Sunrise Health, that's that one sorted so far. So that's all good. So that's just a general overview dashboard. Now, obviously, all dashboards depend on the users, and everyone's got something different to say or the different information that they need. But in Power BI, you can copy and paste any one of these visuals or the whole lot. Control A will just copy the entire lot, dump them on another report, and then modify them and do what you need to do. And there you go, bang, another dashboard. Yep. So there's just another couple of pages. We've got a basic forecasting ability. And if we choose multiple years, we can, this is just a very basic averaging forecasting. If we want to do anything more advanced, we would do that in R, Python, whatever, and feed that information in. But Power BI does include some basic forecasting just on averages, but it's not ARIMA or exponential smoothing or anything nice like that. And we can also present this information in a bubble chart. I've got 2 KPIs. We just compare them here. So we've got bed occupancy going up on the y-axis, staff to patients on the x, and we can just check any number of years. They're pretty spread out. But the more years that we choose, the tighter that they will actually become, because it's random data that's got seasonality applied to it. So we won't get too much into the analysis. It's just about the visualizations and the functions. And that's pretty much it, basically. So it's just a run through of the interactivity and how easy it is to knock up these visualizations in Power BI, and a little overview of the and now the mouse isn't working. I can't go back. Whoops, sorry about that. So whilst I'm fiddling with this, are there any questions about Power BI or KPIs or anything that we were looking at there? No? Yep, all right, okay. I thought I was going to hear a little thing. It's because I didn't wear my glasses. I thought there was a little alarm. Sorry, Mehmet.
No, that's all right. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Let's
I'm out of
give
here quick.
Let's
Sorry.
give a round of
All done.
applause to the Phil.
Lightning short.
So it was amazing to see once, at the beginning we see how to deploy the real-time dashboard from the scratch by using Excel in the Power BI desktop app. And later on, we discovered how to use KPI tracking for some business matters. So thanks for both Felipe and Phil. Now, most of the people are aware and we already covered Microsoft and Google has a BI tool, but most people doesn't know the Oracle has also their own analytics tool. So our last talk will be based on the Oracle Analytics, and luckily our sponsor, Rittman, head of the Rittman Meads, and Borkur and John Mead will be presenting the Oracle Analytics to us. So let's give them a round of applause for one more time.
Hello, hello. I'll try to keep this under 35 minutes.
Sorry, that was 35 minutes.
Right, okay, so I'm going to be talking quickly about Oracle Analytics, previously called Oracle Business Intelligence Enterprise Edition, or OBIEE. I'm okay saying that because I've been saying that since at least 2007 or 2008. The background to this particular product is that it was acquired by Oracle in 2007 and then rebranded into this tool. So it's been around for a long, long time, and it is an enterprise reporting tool, which then also has moved on with the times. You can see that I blogged about it in 2008, and we can see some pretty pictures of that. It is in the quadrant. This is like a map of the universe, and like here's our planet. That's Oracle there. So quickly about the architecture. As I mentioned before, it is an enterprise reporting tool, even though it was kind of originally meant as a search engine. It does support sources of all the sources, like all the other BI tools. You can connect it to Snowflake, you can connect it to Excel, you can connect it to anything. But using this kind of architecture under the hood called the semantic layer, it actually allows us to bring in physical sources, define how they are joined together, even though they're completely different technology. So I can have my forecast coming from Excel, and I can have my quotas from other data source, and then join them in together into the tool. And because we also so several of you mentioned star schemas. So even if your data source isn't actually a star schema, you would actually build it into a star schema thing in the business model. And there you define your drill paths, your aggregates, and dimensions of fact tables, and so on. So here's just a quick sort of example of an OBI or Oracle Analytics dashboard embedded in a public dashboard. So this is an Icelandic government agency that gives detailed day-to-day information about houses being built, how many apartment buildings and so on are being built, and how many have been completed. And the public can actually go then and drill in there and get the information about the day-to-day updated. Now, the enterprise reporting part isn't all that interesting, obviously. When ClickView and Tableau and then Power BI came along with this sort of self-service part, Oracle lagged a bit behind. It took them a little bit of time to sort of catch up with that. And then coming up with the self-service capabilities. And what you can actually do there in this tool now is you can add your own data. You can have data sources come from databases, and et cetera, and so on. And then you can start doing your own sort of analysis and building workflows or data flows where you manipulate the data, join it together. But then you can also train, and this is the part I'm really not sure if it should be, but you can train models in there as well. So that's not a BI thing to be training models, but you can train models, save them, and then apply them. Or you can bring your own models written in any language, deploy it into the Oracle sort of cloud part, and then consume them in your analysis in OBIE. It has these different things, so you can read on the slides there. You can do your normal classifications, clustering, and regression, and all that. But then you can also apply pre-built language model, document understanding, and vision models. So, for example, here's some handsome guy on a motorcycle taking petrol somewhere in France. But you apply that through the vision and the text recognition, and there we have sort of, the words and so on. Do with it what you will. I just like the picture of a motorcycle. We've seen different tools. I mean, they all kind of look the same. They all kind of do the same. You can do the all different kind of graphics, and you can, interact with it. Here we see the user interacting with it, duplicating something, changing that into textual representation of the graph that you had, and it comes up with the natural language part, something like that. And then, and then you can do all sorts of things. Okay, I'm just looking here at measures on the left that I haven't dragged into my visualization. I can go and ask it, okay, give me some insights into sales, and we can do some analysis like that. And it's going to find some anomalies there. Okay, I'm interested in this one. I click plus. I add it onto my visualization. And Bob's your uncle, you have now picked that thing. And there's actually no code. There's just drag and drop. But of course, you could also write your own expressions and so on. Trying to go as fast as I can. And then, sort of lastly, it's some more on auto insights. And I think John's going to show a little bit more on that later, where you can interact with things, and then the tool is going to try to give you sort of the best graphic representation of the data, and you can choose from all of those different ones that it comes up with, and then you can add them onto your dashboard and save them. And of course, you have all these mad visualizations, all the different types of things, not just donuts, but other different types. I'm not really going to go into those, but any of the tools today obviously are going to have all these different kinds of mad visualizations that nobody really understands. Right. Was that less than 35 minutes?
That's good. It'll take us 20 minutes to change over, though. Yeah.
Refresh that because I waited too long.
Right. Let me just get on the right page before I start talking. Right, so just to sort of conclude this, and I want to take a bit, one area further that Borkur was talking about. And I think, given my role is predominantly sales, so I'm not really so technical, one of the questions I get from clients a lot now is, well, now there's all the sort of Gen AI stuff, can I just talk to my data? And I think there's an element with tooling, and this isn't just the Oracle tooling, because you'll see it in Looker and you'll see it in Power BI, where you can see the tools moving towards this sort of, I don't know, sort of user experience, a different user experience. So the kind of older user experience was, I will build dashboards, I'll import stuff, I will then build some kind of semantic model, and I will build dashboards. I think if you go forward, say, 5 years or something, you'll start to maybe get different ways that people interact with data. I don't think we're there yet at the moment, but I'm going to rather try and dangerously, or at my own peril, demonstrate the features within the Oracle tool that will support this. So not unlike Felipe's data model, I've got a sales data model.
which will open here. And I'm going to show you 3 different things, and Borkur alluded to one of them, in terms of, okay, I've got some sales data. Maybe my role in an organization is an analyst, and I'm interested in what actually, what I can find for this. What's the point in me looking at this sales data? Well, I want to find trends. I want to find something different. I'd quite like some data to show on the screen, not just some sort of blank things, because I'm going to run out of things to say. So let me just step around here. No, nothing there at all. Let me just hit the refresh button. There we go. So the first thing of the 3 is there are some insights, and Borkur alluded to this. How do I actually scroll on this? Oh, there we go. It's the other way as my laptop. So the first thing I can do is sort of look at various sort of visualizations that are there. It's always good using someone else's laptop. So the first thing is if I look at sort of, I don't know, okay, a growth bridge graph. We can see this growth of revenue over time. What are the different sort of components making that up? So I'm going to click the little plus and add that to the top. I'm going to carry on scrolling down until I find something else that may give me some insight. Okay, something really simple. What's the split of revenue like? And then, some forecasting. This could be useful. So again, this is the tool just generating this for me. Now, these aren't kind of perfect, but the point of actually putting them on the screen is then I can go and edit them, and I can sort of close this and then go and do further exploration of what's there. The second feature is if I take one of these sort of metrics and I right-click, there we go, look at that. And I can say explain selected. So again, this will just go away in the background. It'll look at the dimensionality or however it sees that data, and it's looking for sort of causal or other sort of factors that will compare the selected value you've got probably to the broader population. So again, as an analyst, what I'm looking to do is to say, okay, well, that's interesting. I can see that, my internet sales or this kind of sales is more or less, but if I flick through here, does it trend any differently? Is there anything else going on with this that sort of looks differently? So here I can say, okay, well, for what I'm looking at, I can see an increase over time, or I can see, various things happening in different ways. And again, I can add these. I've got a little plus button in the top, so I can add these, and I can sort of slowly, instead of, I suppose, me thinking as an analyst and building my dashboard up, I can actually be led by the data and what's underlying the data. And the final thing, and this is, I would say, in the very early stages, is a kind of chatbot kind of thing. So again, I can start to say to my data, I can then say maybe revenue by city. Now, it does take a second or two to do it, and I was playing around with it before the demo, and it was slightly temperamental in terms of what is there. But what it should do is generate, okay, this is me interrogating my data, so I can now see my revenue by city. Again, I've got options. I can either add that to my canvas, and that becomes part of my visualization. I can ask completely different questions, or I can kind of modify my query in terms of what's there. So I suppose, again, I would say how it's set up at the moment, there is an amount of configuration. It will use column names. It won't use things like comments and additional metadata in the data store at the moment. And again, if it's supporting multiple data stores, that gets a sort of fairly complicated thing. There is a screen I can go in to start to set additional data to set this up. So if I go into my data set, and again, this is probably analogous with what Felipe created in terms of Power BI, I can start to set attributes and set synonyms for it. So again, there's sort of work to do with this. There's some labeling to do. It's never going to understand, but you can start to see how it's going to move. And I suppose the sort of question is really for how users ending up, or will use BI tools in, say, 2 years' time, 5 years' time, will it be driven by a more sophisticated version than this? Or will it be the more sort of traditional, right, I'm going to build a star schema or one big table and build reports and dashboards and show that to people? So, yeah, that's my question.
questions so far?
I saw that there was a chatbot as well. Is there an LLM behind that?
Yes.
And that LLM sending the data out anywhere, or is that a completely private network LLM?
I think it's within Oracle's cloud. So it's within, and they've got a partnership with Cohere. So it is self-contained within that. I'm trying to just, as I answer it, think what it's actually sending to that. So I don't know the full answer, but yeah, I can find out.
Because a lot of this data is expected to be like private, right? When it's given to an LLM.
Yeah, so I think there's a difference between aggregated data here. So I wouldn't expect you to be able to go, and we looked at some sort of open data or something for individuals, which customer did this or what's the idea of that. In terms of maybe what's aggregated and sending, sort of maybe markers for sort of dimensions plus aggregate, some data or aggregated data, there's no real sort of meaning in that per se. So I think it would be possible to program it or to design it such that you could still send, sort of basically some sort of attribution and some sort of aggregated data to a public LLM, and without sort of contravening any, data integrity or PII or any sort of data protection. But how it exactly does it, I don't know.
Okay, so by default itself, is it programmed to not send the data, or do we need to take some additional measures?
I don't know the answer.
Okay.
Borkur, do you know the answer?
I'll just add on to that. What John was saying is that, for example, the thing we were seeing there is an assistant that isn't sending any data. It is trying to build your query for you, to build the visualization. So there's actually no data being sent back and forth other than into the server that has the metadata about. So the next thing would be coming, okay, show me all clients that bought coffee. Well, then it has to be running, but it's going to be running the query against the data source. It just has to figure out how to build the query. Oracle has plenty of other tools where it's integrating these sort of AI assistants and so on. Another one is called Select AI, where actually you can write a SQL statement. You'd say Select AI, and then write the SQL statement using sort of pseudo language or a regular statement. And there it actually can start to going into the database, sending out queries to an MML or some other source, and then bringing the data back. And that's where it comes into this privacy part.
So the data isn't going back and forth, the metadata, effectively it's translating English language using the metadata to create a query. The query then takes the normal path of execution to the data source, brings the data back, shows the data.
Yeah, so we did, if we just brag a little bit, John did a presentation in America a few months ago where we actually did put together the Select AI, where we take the statement and then send that into our ETL tool using our own IP to generate mappings and actually populate tables based on the Select statement that you did. So you can build it.
Leave the system. It's completely contained.
Yeah.
It's just
effectively a query language.
Yeah. So if you just take all the create table statements of your entire database, throw it in there, and then say, okay, write a query that does this for me, but I use not your language to do it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Sorry, not AI related, but Oracle Analytics is probably the one I've heard least about. Is there any reason or any kind of reasons why you would recommend Oracle Analytics if you weren't already on the Oracle stack?
So there was a Gartner bake-off recently. So Gartner do a sort of like tools trade-off kind of thing where it was Tableau, Power BI, and Oracle to come on stage. They give them a data set and some features, and this year Oracle won it. And I'll say that sort of deliberately in terms of that I'm sure there's been other years that either Tableau or Power BI win it. To answer your question of should you choose Oracle above Power BI or Tableau or Looker or any other tool? I mean, I work in Oracle, so the easy answer for me is yes, of course you should. Are BI tools as commoditized now that depending on the specific needs of your organization and the skills you've got, they would influence that choice? Of course they would. So I think it does depend on who you are. I think there is also an argument that if you look at the magic quadrant, that you can make arguments that each of the tools is really good. There will be specific things, sort of Looker has a, greater propensity to sort of source control and things like that. Power BI is more ubiquitous, i.e. more people are licensed for Office 365, so it kind of lands up on their desktop. With Oracle, maybe more people have got a, financials ERP system, so that might be their route into it. So there are different routes that people would get to this. But actually, in terms of if you just look at it feature, probably year on year, each vendor could stand up here and say, well, I'm much better than you because of A, B, and C. So absolutely, it should be considered in that same bracket of tools, but your specific reasons for choosing it may vary depending on your organization's history and needs.
All right.
Can I just ask a quick question? I'm all right with it.
Yeah.
But what's the sort of minimum buy-in?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Just hold on a second.
I forgot that.
Well remembered.
Hi. What's the minimum buy-in if you're not on the Oracle stack? Because
you can buy, name 5 users or something like that. So just the visualization side of the tool without the semantic layer. I think the minimum is either 5 or 10 users, and that's sort of self-contained. It will have, allow you to upload data sets and do that.
how much is 5 or 10 users?
I can't remember.
10K, 5K,
I think
20.
it's not in the K. It'll be like sort of $50 a month or.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
no, that's all right. Yeah, well, that's worth investigating then.
It's not ridiculous.
Yeah, okay. No, that's cool.
And Oracle do a free cloud account, and I'm not sure can you get OAC as a free service?
You get $300.
Yeah. So if you wanted to look at it without paying money, sign up and get a free Oracle account. You've got to put your credit card in, but they give you $300, and then that will give you enough to faff around for a while and build some stuff.
I think that's all of the questions, right? Right then, that one our last speaking session from the Rittman Mead, our sponsor. So let's give another round of applause to them.